It was rough. Before I get started, my son now is happy, he's healthy, he's thriving, but it's been a long road. I gotta say it for anyone who's new, my name's MJ, I'm a trans man, I have a biological son, that's him and I when he was first born. My son was premature, but he was just like on the cusp of not being premature. They claimed that the issues we were having was because he had preemie issues. Really, it's because I developed, I think it's called a choreo infection, because they didn't believe me that I was in labor because I was in no pain at all. And then it passed on to my son, so he had to fight off an infection. I had to fight off an infection. Look at the baby wrinkles. I can't stand it. So literally from day one, my son, he had this issue where he would choke on like formula, breast milk, it didn't matter. He would choke on any liquids he tried to consume. And of course it was terrifying, like I'd be ready to call the paramedics all the time. I was trying to get in touch with specialists, and finally I found people that would come to the house and evaluate him. And they blamed me. They told me that the reason he was choking was because of the way I was positioning him while feeding him. Genetic testing and x-rays would show it wasn't my fault. My son was born with something called hypotonia. He had low muscle tone, mainly in his jaw, and this affected him swallowing liquids, and he would end up aspirating. This is why up until recently, you've seen me have to thicken my son's drinks all the time, even like a decade later. He just got the okay to not have, thickener in his drinks all the time now. So my son was also born with something called lateral It's similar to what's more commonly diagnosed, which is torticollis, except his head was literally to one position, and he could move his head forward, but it was a struggle. It was painful for him. He could not move his head to the opposite side. Because of this, he ended up developing plagiocephaly. Plagiocephaly is, as you can see here, like the side of his head is flat on one side. Literally from his neck to his head, there was no definition. It was all flat. So we ended up getting him evaluated for that, and once again ran into some really unprofessional specialists. He had a fantastic orthopedic surgeon. He didn't need surgery, but that's who he got his orthopedic helmet through. But I didn't know if I wanted him to have an orthopedic helmet, because if it was just cosmetic, I didn't know if I wanted to have my infant in a helmet for 23 hours a day during the summer. One of the specialists said to me, "Well, you don't want him to be that kid on the playground everyone's pointing and laughing at, do you?" Anyways, the surgeon ended up talking me into getting the helmet because it's not just cosmetic. He also would have had to go through getting custom bike helmets, custom glasses, and I didn't want my son to have to go through that. I got more. I'm going to have to make a part 2. I don't even got time. But I'm just going to say quickly, if you have a kid who's going through these things, feel free to reach out. Sometimes it takes me a while to answer my DMs, but I always answer them. Okay, so like I said in the last video, my son now, he is happy, healthy, thriving. He is 9 years old. I honestly don't talk about this part of our journey a lot because I started social media when he was older. But I know a lot of other parents struggle with some of these things that we've dealt with, some of these medical issues, so why not talk about it? Maybe it'll help someone. So in the last video, I talked about my son's laterocollis, plagiocephaly, dysphagia, hypotonia. Now we're going to move on to before he got his autism diagnosis. Honestly, nobody thought that my kid was autistic. The doctors didn't think so, we didn't think so. Not that I knew anything about autism anyways, to be honest. Everybody thought he was deaf. And well, that's because he failed a hearing exam just on one ear. So we thought he couldn't hear out of one ear, and that's what was affecting his communication skills and his ability to react to certain things. Because of that, he had to have a sedated ABR, and that actually ruled out any hearing loss. That's when they told me they thought that it was probably behavioral, and that is why we ended up getting him evaluated, and he got a diagnosis of autism. Shortly after that, he had to get an MRI. My son, because he has hypotonia, not only is he hyperflexible, but he tends to kind of fall a lot, and when he does, he has broken bones. My son is only 9 years old, and he's broken his elbow and, this little bone in his foot. I was actually terrified when he first broke a bone, because I was, so scared that they would think that, I did something. I already get looks because of how I look. Even before I transitioned, I had a lot of tattoos. People don't always take kindly to that. But surprisingly, the doctor was so understanding, and he was like, no, we actually see this a lot in autistic kids, especially with hypotonia. They have hyperflexibility, so their arms and legs are sometimes in positions that maybe don't make sense to us, but it makes sense for their bodies. But yeah, he had to have a cast on. I have pictures, but he's older in them, so I don't want to share them. I try not to share photos of my son when he's like close to his age now, just to be safe. And then he was at his dad's house and he went on a camping trip and he broke a bone in his foot. And I inquired, I'm like, are you sure that this was, due to like something like, an accident? And they said, yeah, this is not foul play at all. But I cannot tell you the anxiety that goes along with having a kid who like breaks bones easily, especially when you look like this. It's scary. My son also had to have a sleep study done when he was younger because he does not sleep well. They found he had sleep apnea. Because of that, he ended up having surgery, having his adenoids removed, hoping that would help. Unfortunately, it didn't, but we tried. He also had to get a biopsy, an esophageal biopsy, I believe it's called, to ensure that his swallowing issues were due to the hypotonia and not another medical concern. He's been through a lot, but he's happy as shit. I got a good kid.